How's it going? Happy New Year. I'm back with a new podcast and I want to just get straight in with this. I wanted to kick off 2022 with what I think is such an exciting interview with a guest that I'm honoured and happy and very grateful to have on. Jake Gosling. He's a Grammy-nominated, BRIT Award-winning, multi-platinum selling music producer. He's a songwriter. He's also runs his own label. He's a publisher as well. And he's been in the music industry for over 2 decades. He's someone that's got such a massive wealth of experience, and he's worked with some of the biggest artists on the planet. But just before that, he's also a remixer, a manager, and he's the founder of Goldun Egg record label. It's a great independent label that he runs, and it's got a great cohort of artists. Artists like Nukes, who I featured on the podcast before. Another artist that they've got that I really like is Fergus. Here's some artists and projects for you. Ed Sheeran, his album Plus. Ed Sheeran, Multiply. Paloma Faith, Fall to Grace. One Direction, Up All Night and Take Me Home. The song by One Direction, Little Things. Shawn Mendes, Illuminate. KSI, Holiday. Jake was a producer on all of these tracks. He's also done his fair share of songwriting. He was a co-writer on Ed Sheeran's Lego House and most of the Plus album. KSI Holiday, he co-wrote Incomplete by James Bay. All Time Low, Missing You. The guy's an absolute monster. He's an absolute machine. In terms of his awards, he was nominated at the 58th Annual Grammy Awards for Record of the Year with Thinking Out Loud. He was nominated at the 2015 Grammy Awards for Best Album with Ed Sheeran's Multiply. He won the BRIT Award for Album of the Year in 2015, obviously for Ed Sheeran Multiply, and has been nominated twice at the Brits for Producer of the Year. He's absolutely incredible, and it was an absolute honour for me to chat to him. Jake Gosling. We'll start chatting about Goldun Egg then. I want to go back through your incredible career and obviously all the amazing artists and projects you've worked on. But Goldun Egg seems like a bit of a, as an outsider looking in, like a bit of a passion project of yours.
Absolutely. I mean, I think for me it was you know, I've you know, worked so much behind the scenes on stuff and seen so many new artists come through my doors over the years. And it was really a vehicle to sort of reinvent what I felt a label was. And I saw so many disappointed people who'd signed to, you know, record labels and, you know, not really being given the chance sometimes to really sort of develop their own, you know, their own sort of journey. And a lot of the times it would even horrifically, you know, they were sort of changed as artists, you know, and it was really sad to see that happen, especially for young people who are working out what it is and they think by signing a record deal it's going to mean that suddenly you're an overnight success. It doesn't always work like that. You know, there's so much that goes into it. So Goldun Egg was really I guess a sort of an extension of that, and trying to create a platform where new artists could run their own music and decide what they want to release. It's an artist-led label, so I let them call the shots, and I'm really there just to sort of steer and help and advise, you know, and you know, where possible, you know, help them to avoid those pitfalls and help them to sort of avoid those moments of stress and insecurity that can come with your own music and being an artist, and just give them the confidence really to actually go out there and do it themselves as much as they can, because for me that's what works best.
Right, so is that what a successful label is to you then? It's an artist-led label. Do you think that that's where most of the charm is in a label, when the artists kind of use it as a vehicle to lead themselves?
I think that, you know, all the great artists I've worked with over time have always, I've seen a real similar pattern with this, whether it be Ed Sheeran or Paloma Faith or the Libertines or anyone. You know, they're different genres, but what they really completely understand and get is themselves, and they really love to be able to, you know, get involved in all sides of their creativity. And that's not just writing the songs, that's down to the artwork or the music video or the treatment for the music video, or you know, just like the whole thing as a whole, you know, even sorting out their own gigs early on, or just sort of going out and flogging their own merch, you know, and those sort of things, which I've seen again and again. But not everyone has that, you know, and I think that's the key. You know, it's you can't make an artist makes themselves, and it takes all these different elements for it to work. Obviously, hard work being the main factor in that. And with a lot of creatives, it's difficult sometimes because, it's all well and good just being a great songwriter, but you still need to promote your music and you still need to get out there amongst it all and push it as much as you can. For me, that's the main ethos behind where it sort of starts and where it heads.
And what's your stance on artists? And the first one that springs to my head, and there's so many that have done it, is say like Chance the Rapper, someone that does it totally independently. Do you think that's a equally viable route?
100%. I think there'll always be that. And, the problem is it's a lot harder because with things like Spotify, all the major record labels own Spotify. So it's very easy for them with a new artist to put them on every single playlist known to man. But those figures we've seen, don't always translate. I've got mates who are signed to majors and they've got, over 1 million streams, but there's no one at the gigs. And that's because it's sort of false. It's like if you're on a playlist, it's just going to get randomly played alongside a mood thing or a coffee thing or a whatever it might be thing. And that doesn't really translate into people physically going, oh, I love this artist. A lot of people probably won't even know who the artist is. I mean, look at TikTok, for example. There's so much music on there, but half the people probably don't know who the artist is or what the song is. They identify with the song, but they don't really know who it is, which is a really bizarre way of sort of, I guess, of it working.
Right. TikTok's a weird one, isn't it? Because there's there's multiple songs I can think of now. Wouldn't be able to tell you who they're by. But it's not to say that TikTok doesn't have its place, because think of artists like Olivia Rodrigo, it blows them up. But it's just, like you said, about making that connection.
100%. I mean, listen, I think, all promotion, no matter what, it's good to have as much promotion as possible. You want your music everywhere and you want everyone to hear it. And yes, TikTok can work in that way. We have yet to see, I guess, a TikTok artist in that sense of the word, if you're purely starting from TikTok to go on and hit the top of the charts. I mean, so obviously Olivia Rodrigo, she already had a major label behind her and it was lots of other things that were in play, and of course her music and connected in so many different ways, not just from TikTok. But you're right, it does definitely push things forward, but yeah, I don't think it's the answer.
For sure, man. I know that you're sat there chatting to me from your own studio that you've been in for a while, Sticky Studios. Chat to me about that space that you're in at the minute. It must be pretty sick having your own studio.
No, it's great. I mean, it's it's an old shed. I've been there for ages, and it's done me very well. And it's just got a really nice atmosphere to it. It's very low key. It's in the middle of a sort of garden. There's windows and light, and a few mice and squirrels running around. But it's a great space to create in for writing and just recording. I mean, we've had so many amazing people walk through those doors. And it just has a nice atmosphere to it. It has a nice sort of chilled environment, I guess. And like a lot of studios, that some artists go to, they're all sort of super pro, and sometimes for a new artist as well, that can be a bit daunting. So I think when you go into a garden shed, then for a lot of people, they're sort of like, oh cool, it's just here, and I can just not worry too much about the red light syndrome. It goes on.
Right.
And you're like,
Exactly. Well, yeah, I think if I was an artist, I'd feel more at ease writing in an environment like that rather than being in somewhere that feels like a science lab or something. You want to feel at ease, you want to feel relaxed. Where did this all start for you, man? Like, talk me through. Was it something that you just, stumbled into?
Sort of. I mean, it was. I mean, my dad was a musician, so I was surrounded with music, to be fair, like my whole life as a child growing up. And I think that definitely rubbed off on me, without a shadow of a doubt. But because my dad had been through it, he'd obviously seen some pretty bad bad aspects of the music industry, and he was like, look, you've got to be prepared for this, because it can be pretty hardcore and it can be pretty sharky as well, and you've really got to watch out for those. And my dad had his fair share of people sort of ripping him off here and there, and other stuff happened, but he had a real talent, and I guess I sort of learnt a lot, the pitfalls of bits and pieces here and there sort of early. I still got some of my own there, but but yeah, it was something I guess I started writing songs very early, when I was younger, just fiddling around the piano, and it went from there. And then I never studied music as such. My parents were like, look, you should do something different, maybe do a media course, or I was into my art and stuff like that. And I'm glad I did that. I went up to Salford Uni and I studied a media course up there, which was good as like a backup, but it actually taught me a lot about the other side, because music is very media driven, completely media driven now, especially with, the social aspect. So so that I learned a lot from that. I did a bit of a work experience, and then was finding it really tough. I was in bands and it would never really happen, and I was like, oh no, someone would leave, and I was like, oh god, here we go again. And then it was just me, and then I was like, what do I do? I ended up getting a job as a record plugger, which I wasn't very good at. I got fired just because I was terrible, and then and I didn't enjoy it. And I remember having a real moment, and I was like, right, you know what, I'm gonna go back to what I love and really go for it, and work with anybody and everyone, and just do it for 100 quid here or 200 quid there, just to try and make ends meet and get people in the studio and record demos and stuff like that. And I was self-taught. I just sort of learned from being in bands, that I was in, how would we record a drum kit, or how would we do a guitar, and we experimented. I experimented all the time, and I still love to experiment with it. It's something you never stop learning from. There's always something new to try out and mess with,
Was there a moment for you where everything clicked, where it all fell into place and you were like, right, I'm on this path, I'm set, I'm good to go?
Well, like anything else, I think it was obviously, when success starts to happen, because, until that point, you're only judged on your successes, and not all the bits before that. There were slowly things were kicking in. I think getting involved with the grime scene quite early on and doing remixes was my first sort of stepping stone to really sort of open up some doors in terms of music for me to actually sort of go, well, this is starting to work. But I was always very much into the idea of creating new things, and even with the grime thing, I was throwing in musical moments into that when I was working with Wiley and Dot Rotten and all these other characters and stuff. And meeting Ed Sheeran obviously was I guess the main sort of thing that really sort of kicked things off. And when that really connected, it was all independent. I did all of his EPs, and leading up to the collaborations one, which was an amazing thing to do, and obviously by having all these sort of rappers on there as well with Ed, it was something that hadn't been done before, and that started to chart. I mean, it started to sort of fly, and we were like, whoa, it was put out independently, and suddenly labels started to really show some interest in what happened with Ed. And I was terrified, because I was like, I don't know if I wasn't that well known, so I thought, am I going to end up producing his record, even though I'd worked with him for about 3 or 4 years prior to that. It was like, here we go, am I still going to be involved? So it was pretty scary, but Ed's very loyal in that respect, and he was like, look, I'm sure this is going to happen and work. And I did hear the label did talk to other people, but I heard that those producers were actually like saying, look, this sounds great, why do you need me? Which is which I loved, and I've sort of carried on that same ethos as well. If there's something that I don't think for me to get involved, I won't, just for the sake of it.
And the fact that those producers said that's a huge testament to your work, and also a huge testament, I reckon, to the bond and the relationship that you built up with Ed when you first met him back in 2007, or when you first started working with him then. And it sounds like, to me, it happened quite organically. When you have someone like Ed Sheeran walk through the door, right, he didn't just become Ed Sheeran overnight. It must have started off as one of those things that, he must have presented you a few dodgy tracks, and maybe his songwriting chops weren't there in the first place. Could you see it in the first place, where you're like, do you know what, I reckon he's going to go on to something? Did you have that sixth sense as a producer?
100% I did. I mean, people ask me that question a lot, and I really did. I remember talking to various other people about it who didn't see the same thing, and they were like, look, he doesn't look like a pop star. His songs are not, he's rapping in them, and he's singing rapping them, and they're loopy, and there was a lot of people were like, no, I don't get it. But I was, very much like, no, this is ridiculous. Like, there is something incredible here. It's so different to what was going on that it just made sense to me, and it made sense to Ed. I mean, he was very clear on, he'd already thought of his names for his albums when I was with him.
Man.
I know. I was like, he has some crazy sixth sense as well, and I think it's like that we didn't always agree on things, and we didn't always say I wasn't like yes yes yes, and he wasn't all yes yes yes. There was definitely a really natural, organic, like you said, organic approach to it. We all wanted the best for it. There was no ego involved, and it was just a really incredible sort of feeling. It really was. And when it started to happen, it was like, whoa, this is quite weird.
How did you actually run into him in the first place? Did someone like point him your way?
So basically, my publishers at the time, they would send me links to different things. There was a girl that was working for my publisher called Leslie, and she sent over a track. I funny enough, had checked out stuff as well on MySpace, which sort of was weirdly coinciding. And I was like, this is weird. There's something here. And the first thing I heard was "You Need Me, I Don't Need You," which was not the finished version, but the version he did initially. And I was like, this is insane. I was like, the lyrical content, and I'm a real lyric person. Like, I'm all about lyrics. Like, that it has to have a message. It's got to have a meaning, and it's got to be a story, and there's got to be, otherwise it's just blurb, it's just pop, it's just whatever, and getting that balance right for it being like something that lyrically turns your mind around, but also melodically and musically, if those things all work together, then for me it just worked like unbelievable. I was like, this is crazy.
Man, I remember when I first heard that. In fact, I think I first came across Ed when I heard him, I think he was jamming with Example, and it was do you remember that whole Nando's song thing?
Yeah,
it was that,
Nando,
and that's when I was like, there's something different here. Like, you just felt a shift in the industry at the time when Ed Sheeran came about, and the fact that you were there for that and you witnessed that at that time is incredible. What's it like being with Ed in the studio? Because, right, I've got my thought as to what it must be like, and I obviously have no idea, but in my head, Ed Sheeran would come in, and because he's such a prolific songwriter, he would have a song pretty much done, and he says, how do I treat this? What do I do with it? Or was it one of those things that it was literally a blank canvas?
It would depend. I mean, there were certain ones that around the time, I remember, that there would be songs that he would come in with and say, look, I've pretty much written this, like Small Bump or something, for example, where he had the idea and the concept there, and I was like, look, because obviously I would co-write with Ed, but it was a really natural thing. So it would be like, if it was a co-write thing, then we would generally start from nothing, and we'd sit in the room and then we'd thrash out concepts or something. Like Lego House, for example, that was a concept that was discussed and talked about, and the song was written after then, from nothing in the morning to something in the evening, and done. And then there would be other ones like Small Bump or the A-Team and stuff like that, where Ed had written literally 100% himself. I remember with Small Bump, I was like, do you want me to get involved? He's like, no, bro, no disrespect, but, I've sort of pretty much, I'm like, fine, that's cool, no worries, all good. And again, that's what I mean about no ego. It's nice to be able to not throw that into the mix and go, well, I must, you know what I mean? I never got into music for that reason. I got into it because I loved it. And I think that's the difference between doing that or just considering it to be like, oh, I'm going to make loads of money and write a pop song. That was never my plan. And I don't think it was Ed's either. He just loved performing. He would perform non-stop in my house. Like, it was literally like everywhere. We'd finish a song, we'd walk back from the studio where I lived about, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 minute walk away. And sometimes we'd just walk back playing the song. We never stopped listening to the songs. It was just like relentless. But because we were so immersed in it, it was like, what is this,
What do you think it is that makes Ed Sheeran such a good songwriter?
I think it's his understanding of melody. I mean, he's influenced by, his influences are from Eminem to Joni Mitchell, to 50 Cent, to Dylan, to Van Morrison. He's got a real mix of stuff that he loves, and I think that with that sort of approach, if you've been brought up, listening to that sort of music, such a different style as well, that it's going to influence you as a songwriter. And I think that's normal. I think every songwriter is like that. I don't think that's that I think the difference is it's a lot of people can sometimes draw from what it is right now. Like for a lot of pop writers, they'll be like, oh, we need to write another pop record exactly like that last hit, that happened yesterday. Whereas with other stuff, it's like you're drawing from, like I said, the lyrics, for example, there's only so many chords, there's only so many things you can do. But Ed just has a really good way of switching things up, and he's got a real simplicity to it, but also a real skill. His performance and his performing of those songs, I don't know if you've ever seen him live, but
I have. He's incredible.
Yeah, so the way he can hold a crowd, and literally move away from a mic, and just sing a cappella at Wembley or something, and have the whole crowd like silenced. And he was doing that really early on, and those moments were like, I will never forget those moments where literally you couldn't hear a pin drop, and to have that control over a crowd of people is incredible. But he learned that because he gigged non-stop. He literally was trying stuff out all the time. And again, with songs, we'd write stuff, whatever, and then he'd go and play it out and see what the reaction was to the crowd. And that was a good way to test them out.
Right, exactly. And you worked a fair bit on Multiply. And there were, please correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, but there were quite a few producers that jumped on board with Multiply. You obviously had Rick Rubin, you had Pharrell, but, Plus really was your baby with him. You did a lot of the co-writing, you produced all of it. And when I listened to that album, and I was listening to it in the car on the way here, what I love about it, and what perhaps made so many people fall in love with Ed Sheeran's music in the first place, is how natural sounding it is. In some places, it literally is just a guitar and a voice. How important was it for you to tap into that live aspect of what he does and not overproduce it?
I think that was a real sort of, that was a real thought. It was something that was really thought about, should I say. It wasn't, I didn't want to fill up too much of the space, and for me it's always been, it's always, like I said, the lyrics, the melody and the vocals, and everything else is there to help address that and to support that, not the other way around. I think with a lot of popular music these days, it tends to be like completely filled. Every gap is completely, everything is squashed to the the nose, and you're like, where's the space in this? But that's okay for, like, I think quick things, just to hit hard quick. But I think in terms of standing the test of time, I think all the great songs, Every Breath You Take, The Police, or or the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the way that was produced, it was literally just what it was. There wasn't tons of other things going on, and I think that approach was what I wanted to take when I was working with Ed, and make sure that the sound came across in a very human way. And I didn't have a door on the vocal booth when I was doing Plus. I think it fell off. So it was like
never ideal.
Never ideal, but it's sort of, you can hear little creaks in there. And I used to love those old records like Parliament, Funkadelic, those old sort of groove things where the drummer would sort of go out of time a bit, and then you'd hear the tambourine sort of slightly go off here, or the vocal, or someone cough or whatever it was, and those elements, I think, really made those records special, and it gave it a human touch, rather than, everyone's obviously working on computers now, and they have done for a while, but I think the way I approach it is I try and approach it in an organic way, and I commit things. I call it commit, when I'm like, okay, I've got this sound, I'll fiddle with it and mess with it, and then I'll just literally bounce it. I won't give myself the option to sometimes turn around and go, no, I want to be able to save it all. And do you know what I mean? It's just, it's there. Once it's done, it's done. It's like back in the old days, you press record on the guitar, and that's what it was. So there's something quite freeing about that, not having too many endless possibilities to keep sort of going, okay, well, I can go back and change this and change this. I like to be able to go, no, commit, this is it, we're going. And make the sounds good. The sounds you've got, work on those, rather than it being, filling them out with loads of stuff. If it sounds great, like Thinking Out Loud, for example, as a song, there's not a lot going on there, but I just making sure that each element was the right element, rather than it being full with strings and, bells and whistles,
Dude, Thinking Out Loud, that's a monster track. Like... When you were writing that, you probably thought, okay, great song. Did you have any idea that he was going to go on to do that? I mean, it was the first single in the UK to hit 500 million streams on Spotify. I mean, come on, what's all that about?
Listen, I wish I had written it, by the way. Unfortunately, I didn't write that one.
You produced it, so yeah, you produced it.
I produced it, yeah. That was Amy Wadge and Ed on that one. But that one came in very late in the day. That happened sort of when the album was sort of finishing up. It was like a sort of, suddenly got a call from Ed going, hey, dude, I've got this one more song thing. I want to come in and record it. I'm like, okay. I think I had like a voice note of something on the phone. He used to send little bits and pieces. Like, okay, cool. And then literally he came in, recorded it. We did that one very quickly, and we needed some piano on it. And he wanted that old school vibe to it. And I was like, talk about old school vibe. My dad obviously was an old school vibe. So I was like, let's get him on the piano.
Shut up. So your dad played piano on that track?
Yeah, that was Ed's idea. He was like, what about your old man? Why don't we get him down? He's from the 60s, 70s vibes. He can jump all over this. I was like, yeah, great shout. So he came down. We got, said, look, can you come and... So that's it.
That's mad. Every time you listen to that track now, you're like, oh, my old man played on that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I know. He keeps phoning me up going, got any more work for me?
I don't blame him, to be honest. I don't blame him at all.
Yeah. I put him on a few things.
Mate, I could obviously chat to you about Ed Sheeran all day, but you've worked with so many amazing artists. I thought I'd try some more quickfire things, mate. I want to list off some songs that you've either helped write or co-write or produce. I just want you to kind of just give me a few one-liners on just a memorable experience from that process. So I've got One Direction, right? Little Things, tune.
Little Things tune. So that reminds me of loads of teenagers turning up and trying to sort of break into the studio and ordering loads of Domino's pizzas to the bottom of the drive.
I see. Fair play. Can't blame them. What about Paloma Faith picking up the pieces?
That reminds me of Fairy Lights. Lots of lights, lots of candles. That was recorded in London with a guy called Nelly Hooper, who I learnt tons from. He's an amazing producer guy as well. He did all the Massive Attack stuff and all that. He was a Bristol guy, but I learnt a lot from him. But just lots of fairy lights, lots of candles, and lots of laughs as well. Paloma's so funny. Her humour is just like hilarious. She's brilliant and super talented.
Yeah, for sure. I love her voice. She's incredible. And what about, and this one really interests me, KSI, because the bloke's a YouTuber, and obviously, he doesn't necessarily have that background in starting off cutting his teeth as an artist. What was it like working on Holiday and working on his album?
Well, that was literally, again, a last minute thing. The album was done. I've never, ever had this before in my life, where we hadn't actually finished the song. It was KSI and Digital Farm Animals. It was the three of us who wrote it. And they both turn up, and we sort of sketched out. I had this guitar riff idea that I'd written, and I was like, I was like jamming out some stuff, and KSI singing some melodies and stuff, and then we had this concept, and it was like, okay, what about holiday? We can't go away anywhere, so you're my holiday. And it was like a really sweet sort of idea of the fact that if you can't go anywhere, then the person you love is right there, and that's your holiday. But what was weird about it is we hadn't finished the lyrics for the verse. We had the chorus, but we just had the melody. Sent it to his manager, and literally within a minute, half an hour or so, got a phone call going, this is a hit, this is the next single.
Oh, man.
I'm like, this is bizarre. I said, we haven't finished the song. He goes, we'll finish the song and then we're going to make it the next single. And I'm like, but the album had been finished. So I was like, well, how all pre-orders had already gone out. It was all just like crazy. Anyway, so we literally booked in, I think, a week later in London. Literally got into a studio, and whilst KSI was doing the vocals, we're all there over the talkback going, that lyric, no, that's not quite right. This lyric, and he's going, what about this lyric? We're like, yeah, that's cool. So it's like absolutely mental. It could have gone a very different way, but we finished it, got it done, and that was the finished product. And literally within weeks, it was then release date. Here we go, and it's now I just heard we just been BRIT nominated for Song of the Year with it as well, which is brilliant. So
man, that's incredible. What was JJ like to work with?
He's great, you know. He's a really, really. Again, it's the same thing, you know. You can still be a YouTuber, you could be whatever, but he loves music. I mean, he's a music obsessed, and he's actually got a great voice, and he's got great lyrics. And I'm really surprised, you know. Sometimes because you perceive someone and you're like, oh right, okay, you're a YouTuber, and I guess people are really good at pigeonholing and putting people in boxes, you know. But with someone like JJ, he's just like got such enthusiasm, and he's so like such a nice bloke. Like when he starts laughing, you can't help but laugh with him. He's
Great
just
laugh,
got the most infectious laugh, and you're like, and it's great to work with people like that, you know. And he's so humble as well. He's another one. He's just got his feet on the ground, and he's so nice, and he genuinely cares. So yeah, I think we're back in actually next year to work on some new stuff, which would be exciting. So
exciting, mate.
Watch this space.
That's the thing. That's one thing I wanted to go on to ask you was, you know, what else is to come for 2022? Like, who else are you working with?
So I'm working with some really exciting new stuff. I mean, I've been doing quite a lot of drill stuff as well, which has been really exciting.
I saw you in the studio with RD, who I'm loving at the minute.
Yeah, no, Ardy's great. I sort of found him pretty early on. It was mental. That has gone so fast. Literally, it was just, when was it? It wasn't even that long ago. I think he just did a freestyle on YouTube, and that popped off the back of that. I was like, right, I love to work with Ardy. He came down. We've done actually quite a lot of songs together now.
Sweet.
So I think there'll be stuff coming there next year. I think more album stuff. Obviously things change and stuff, but looking like there's quite a few there. I've done a few with Central C, I've done a few with Digger D. I've got some stuff coming out with M Hunt Show as well.
Yeah, nice.
So that's been cool to get back into the sort of more of the rap world stuff as well, which I've really enjoyed.
I think I read Tion Wayne as well. Nice.
Done some stuff with Tion. Again, it's been really nice sort of working in that world again. And there's some super talented people there. So there's that. And then on the flip side, there's this guy Mitch Sanders who's really exciting, incredible voice. Like he doesn't know what's going on. He was a builder. He was like a labourer, you know, from Bristol. And you know, literally heard his voice and was like, this is insane. Like he's just got the most and what a songwriter. And he loves that sort of American sort of Bruce Springsteen-y type of vibe. You know, it's like it's really different. And we've done our own sort of thing on it. So that's coming out. A guy called Ewan Mainwood, who's amazing as well. I've got a single coming with him next year. And a girl called Valencia Grace, who's insane. She's this young singer, amazing voice. There's loads of different stuff. A couple of country things as well. So yeah,
you're a busy man.
trying to keep busy. But you know, when you enjoy it and when you love it, and it's so mixed. I think that's what I love about it. I've never wanted to be like necessarily pigeonholed into one thing because I just don't like it. That's why I try and be as diverse as possible and push myself into other areas musically, and it's nice to do that.
Yeah, and when I listen to you, I think you really have your own fingerprints all over the songs that you come into contact with, and I think you don't really as a producer, you don't kind of follow in anyone else's footsteps. But is there any other producers that you see out there that you take inspiration from?
I do. I mean, obviously the legends, you know, Nile Rodgers and Quincy Jones, and, you know, Rick Rubin as well. I mean, you know, Nelly Hooper, who I actually was engineered for. You know, I mean, it's like I am influenced by sounds and sonics. Of course, you are. I mean, when I live and breathe it every single day. But there's not one particular person. I love all sorts of different styles of music, and I'm always trying to sort of, you know, I guess not keep interested, because I am interested, but like just open my ears and my mind to what's happening, you know, as soon as it's happening, and different genres and different places, because it can come from anywhere. It really can.
You've said that with writer's block, it's kind of one of those things, it's easy to buy into the phrase writer's block, and if you've got writer's block, perhaps an artist doesn't know what it is that they want to say. I wonder if you could just explain that a little bit more to me, because the idea of writer's block fascinates me.
Let me give an example. So like lockdown, for example, if you're a 17, 18-year-old, you know, girl, guy, whatever, and you're you're writing songs and you're in lockdown. You've only got those four walls to sort of work with, and that was a really interesting period of time, especially for songwriting, because the amount of songs once you've written about four walls and being trapped and not being able to get out, then you're like, what do I write about now? And there was a few instances with certain writers where they literally were like, you have to have life experience. You have to have things happen in your life. You have to talk about stuff. You've got to be able to, I know you can make stuff up, but there's something different about that. It seems a bit, for me, making it up is like, that's fine. But for your own, to make it magical, I think you have to have some sort of experience of it. You have to be able to have some first-hand or second-hand, or at least some relationship to that song. And with writer's block, I think that comes sometimes from just double questioning yourself and going, oh no, is it good, is it not? If it, and thinking too hard about the outcome rather than just starting it. Does that make sense? So,
absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that's what writer's block can be as well. You might have all the experience in the world, or you might have gone out and done loads of stuff, but then you're double, questioning, and you're going, oh, hold on, is it good? Is it not?
Mm.
And that can just block you. Where you just got to go, just relax, just feel it, close your eyes. I know it still sounds a bit hippie, but you've got to let the song sort of write itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and as a producer, when you get an artist come in and they have that lightning in a bottle moment where they strike on an idea and they're excited and they're rolling with it, how do you feed into that and kind of keep that momentum going? Because I can imagine momentum plays a huge part in getting those songs to sound the way that they do.
Yeah, a lot of it's timing. I mean, everyone works in different ways and different time zones. People, some singers like to sing first thing in the morning, or others prefer to do it in the middle of the night. Some like to have a little drinky before, some people don't. It depends on what it is. It's about environment, and everyone's different. So you got to, for me as a producer, it's trying to capture those moments. It's like I was saying earlier, it's that sort of, those little errors, those little mistakes that can become the magic. Something slightly off or slightly there, or something in the ear that you hear, or a creak of a door, or a rattle of a string, or a something. And I think, it's just keeping that energy up is really, really important. A lot of musicians like to start a bit later, which is all fine with me, because that works well for me. So normally start around at 12 o'clock, we'll have tea and we'll chat, or whatever it might be, depending on who it is and what it is. Obviously, the Libertines was a different thing. That would start a bit later, and then we go on a lot later. Sometimes through the whole night, and finding Pete when he was in his zone, I would just have to grab him. I'd be like, right now, here we go, go, ready to record. Literally, we're off. Let's go with it, and try and get as much down as possible.
Interesting.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's almost like people hit flow states, and it's like, right, just let them run with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just record. Keep going. Let's go. Have you got another one in you? And then like, oh, can we do this? Can we try that? Can we? I was doing all sorts of things to bring them into the studio. We had like all this artwork I got brought in because Pete paints and the boys paint and stuff. So we had big canvases in the room, and we would have paints and inks and stamps and bits of stuff that we got from the market that we'd stick on things, and just to make it a different environment than a sterile studio space.
Amazing, man. What's your main advice be to new artists that are kind of right at the start of their game? What would your main advice be for getting themselves out there, and for songwriting as well, for trying to craft the best thing?
I think the main thing is to really stay as positive about your art and creatively as free as possible. And that sounds a bit broad, but it's like trying not to copy what everyone else does, and try and find your own lane. Try and find something that separates you from another artist, because no one wants the same thing. I know often a lot of labels try and do that, but I think as a new artist, you want to be able to find your own lane and stick to that and experiment. Live is so crucial because it's the best way of picking up new fans and for people to actually hear your music. Online's great as well, but you can't beat live, I would say. And just, not every song you write is going to be great. Don't worry about it. Move on to the next. But every song has value, and it might be that song you wrote, a couple of years ago might not show its head until 4 years later and suddenly become a massive record for you. So you don't need to worry too much, but just be as prolific as possible and create. And just, if you love what you do, and you believe in it as much as you do, then it will. I think it will happen. I think you just got to really fight through it and really believe. It's that you have to really look beyond what it is and stay true to yourself with it as well.